It's like the inverse of our kind of our modern mindset and lifestyle. If you pursue instant gratification, it's constantly you're pursuing gratification after gratification. You're always seeking out the stimuli, like you're scrolling on TikTok and Instagram Reels, and you're watching pornography, and you're eating junk food, and like you're doing all these things, maybe taking drugs, smoking, drinking, doing all these things to constantly give you instant gratification. If you go down that rabbit hole, then you pursue the short-term gratification, but what builds is like structurally a level of misery starts to build, and the misery just gets higher and higher and higher, and you just end up being completely depleted and depressed, and nothing does it anymore. Nothing does the trick anymore. It's like you don't really get any real satisfaction because there's no real progression towards anything that's of some kind of higher value. Mental suffering just accumulates, and that's what we see happening in our culture. And it's like a monastic life or a life of renunciation is the opposite, right? It's like by foregoing instant gratification, by foregoing the pleasure in the immediate moment right now, and you do that again and again and again, keep foregoing the gratification, then what builds is actually a structural level of happiness and joy and bliss and fulfillment. And it's subtle, and you never get to experience that unless you go through all those moments of foregoing instant gratification, delaying gratification, and not to just relapse later, but actually to build that. There's something that comes out of that you only get to experience if you have the discipline to carry that through. And it's the inverse. Yeah. It's the complete inverse.
So let's get into the main topic of today, which is going to be about an interesting kind of unexpected topic, I would say, which emerged because I did a 10-day Vipassana retreat recently, which was the last video. And that brought up a whole world of ideas for me about renunciation and kind of the spiritual path and things like dopamine detoxes and discipline and generally the idea of monasticism and that element of spirituality. And so Florian today is going to tell us about his experience going to Mount Athos, which sounds very, very epic. And I was looking a bit on Wikipedia about Mount Athos, very epic and mythical place. Mm-hmm. So why don't you go ahead and tell us that story? And then we're also going to have a general conversation after that about the idea of renunciation and monasteries and being a monk and that kind of stuff and what that all is really about.
Yeah, sounds good.
Please give us a...
Sounds good. So yeah, for those of you who don't know about it, Mount Athos is a peninsula on the Greek coast, but it's actually independent. It's like an autonomous territory, so it's not part of the Greek state. And it's a very important center in Eastern Orthodox religion, like Eastern Orthodox Christianity. It's a peninsula that has basically been inhabited by monks since the 10th century. So like for 1,000 years or more, monks have been living on this peninsula, and there are these beautiful monasteries there. It's like a dozen of them, and it's a famous holy place, right? Like after Jerusalem, this is actually the number one pilgrimage destination in the world for Christians because of Orthodox Christians.
So there's a dozen monasteries at the mountain or on the mountain.
Yeah, there's like the mountain, and then there's sort of a peninsula around the mountain. Yeah, it's almost like an island. And the story goes that at some point the mother of Christ, the Virgin Mary, landed on the island, and she is said to have blessed the island for its natural beauty, and ever since then it was sort of been revered as a holy place. And the mountain, the mountain itself is considered a holy mountain. And then basically around the mountain are all these different monasteries. And Mount Athos is sort of famous for the fact that it doesn't allow any women to enter. So for 1,000 years, this entire peninsula has been free of the presence of women. So that makes it kind of a unique place on Earth.
No women have been there for 1,000 years.
No women. Some would say it's paradise.
Well,
others would
really,
say, it's hell. But
it must be really peaceful there.
Depends on your persuasion.
Right.
Anyway,
okay.
Well, yeah, the idea is that the only female presence there is the Virgin Mary, and the monks that live there. Of course, there's a reason why no women are allowed, because also these monks are living a life of renunciation, basically, and have taken monastic vows. And I think part of the reason is that women would potentially distract men from their monastic calling, right?
Right, because they're celibate as well.
They're celibate, yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is a unique place. And I was like 23 years old, I think. I had just finished my bachelor's and I'd had a gap year. And then I really felt called to go on some kind of pilgrimage. I was like, I need to go out and I wanted to challenge myself, go on a big journey and kind of, take an opportunity to just be with myself, I don't know, kind of like a soul-searching journey, So I decided I would do a pilgrimage, and then I looked around for a destination, and then I found out about Mount Athos, and I was like, wow, this would actually be a beautiful destination. I found out that you could visit, if you sign up, you can actually visit a monastery. So I looked around a little bit and I decided that that's what I would do. And instead of going by foot, because that would be a bit far, I decided to take the bike. So I took my bicycle, I prepared, got all the stuff I needed, and then I set off for Greece. So in April 2022, I left from the Netherlands and cycled to Greece. It took me 7 weeks, like 60 days. Basically crossing the entire continent.
60 days.
60 days on a bike.
Wow.
Which was amazing. It was wonderful.
Incredible.
It was one of the best experiences of my life. I would do it again in a heartbeat, I had such a wonderful journey. And there's some kind of, I don't know, there's some elegance to traveling on a bike, and just the feeling like, you're on your bike, and everything that you need is with you, and you're just cruising through a landscape, and you're just progressing towards your goal, and you set your eyes on a new side every day. From moment to moment, the landscape changes, and there's a simplicity to that type of life, which made me deeply happy. I really loved it. Everything made sense. It was just like me and my bike and my stuff, my tent, and sort of progressing towards my goal, which was Mount Athos in Greece. And I had a wonderful time. Some hardships along the way, but
that's amazing.
Super nice. Yeah. So yeah, but it's kind of skipping over the 7 weeks. I arrived at the peninsula at Mount Athos. Then there's a little village, sort of at the base of the peninsula, at the start of the peninsula, where you have to sign up to get a permit to enter the island, right? Because it's regulated and because it's an autonomous territory. So then I came there, having fucking cycled for 7 weeks, my beard had grown out, my hair had grown out, sort of, weather seasoned, and lean as fuck, I came there and I was like, I'm ready to be received, like a pilgrim with the honors of a pilgrim. But then I came to this little bureaucratic little office, and then some stern individual sort of, took my, it's going to take my registration. And then I didn't have the cash to pay for the permit or something. And it was not a lot. Or like I was like 45 cents short or something. And I was like, please give me the permit. And he was like, no, no. 45 cents. You paid 45 cents. And I was like, Jesus, okay. Spent 7 weeks cycling here and then you get that type of treatment. But I was like, okay. And I think some other guy in the line paid the 45 cents for me to get my permit. And I locked my bike somewhere with my bike bags and I just took a little backpack and then I set off for the peninsula. So they take a boat and then I arrived at one of the coastal monasteries. But I was actually going to stay at the Bulgarian monastery a little bit more up in the mountains. I think it was called Zografu. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but anyway. And then a pickup truck took me and 2 other guests up into the mountain. And then it was a beautiful monastery. I have to look up like a picture, maybe drop it in the video because it's really worth seeing. I think it's called Zografu.
Yeah, for sure.
Zografu. Yeah, it was a wonderful place, and like it's in a little valley surrounded by trees, and then they have their own little vineyard, where they grow their own grapes from which they make their own wine. And
they drink wine.
Yeah, they do.
Interesting. That's the Christian version of renunciation. Like Jesus drank wine, we can drink wine.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like sacrament, Well, of course, monasteries in Europe also they basically invented beer as we know it, right?
Oh yeah.
The craft beers are like monastery beers.
German beers, yeah.
Belgian beers, yeah.
German monasteries. Sure. Man, that must have been interesting. Being a monk and drinking beer all day.
Yeah.
Maybe not all day, but
then one can be a monk, But yeah, they had their own vineyard and they had their own olive orchard also, so super nice, And then a pretty big monastery, which now it's not completely inhabited. It's like maybe at half capacity or something. And there were almost no guests at this monastery, just me and the 2 other people who arrived with me. And there I had a very friendly welcome. Somebody sort of who's responsible for receiving the guests, gave us a warm welcome, showed us around, showed us to our bedroom, like a very simple bedroom, basically with no amenities, just a bed. And then, I stayed there for a night, and then they basically invite you to just, go along in their rhythm and join them for the dinner in their big hall. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have a question?
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to, as you're arriving at the monastery on Mount Athos, what's the atmosphere like? And what's the air like? And what's the temperature like? What's the vibe like?
Well, the weather was beautiful. Sun was beaming down on my face, and there's this absolute tranquility all around, especially in this monastery up in the mountain, on the hills. Tranquility all around, and like you can hear the birds chirping, and it's like it's a peaceful environment, but it's like there's some kind of extra peace around. And I remarked this to one of the monks that I talked with. I told him like, it's such a serene atmosphere here, and he was like, yeah, that's very true. He said, and he said to me like, there are hundreds of monks praying around the clock on Mount Athos always. That was his explanation for the atmosphere. He's like, it's no wonder that their atmosphere is like this, and it's not a coincidence. And I was like, wow, yeah, I can feel that,
Amazing.
Super nice. And I talked to...
There must be so many places like that around the world.
Right, yeah.
So many incredible places that you wouldn't hear about because it's not something that would be valued or even known about in our culture. Exactly. But I can just think of already a list of places like in India, like Arunachala, or certain monasteries or places, or the Ganges, or where there's supposed to be a spiritual energy in the location, in the land, or with the people there, or with the history there. Or...
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I felt that in India when at the ashram in India, like I felt just a feeling, like, and with the land as well, like it felt different. It felt like a different continent. I mean, it is a different continent, but it felt like a different. It felt like there was a spiritual, airy, like light feeling in the air.
Yeah.
At that place, and it was noticeable feeling in the atmosphere.
Right. Yeah, for me, it's these types of places that make you feel they fill you with reverence, you know, and it's like you walk around in a place like that in a temple or in a monastery, and you're just, you know, you feel solemn and filled with reverence, and you kind of, you know, well, that's what I feel. That's what it inspires in me, you know. It's like a deep respect
Mm.
and appreciation and reverence. Yeah, I don't know how else to put it. It's amazing, places like that. They have some kind of effect, right?
Yeah, for sure. Does something to your phenomenology even. It's yeah, and it can also open you up, I guess, open you towards like sublime experiences, or it's just a reflective attitude or something.
Yeah.
It's very special. We don't have those in Western cities very much. I mean, you have that in churches, to a degree, but a lot of places now, churches are kind of stripped of their spiritual energy and
Yeah.
not practiced, not used in that way.
Right. That's true. That's true. Which is a shame, actually. Right.
Yeah. Mm.
But definitely this place had it. You know, this place had it for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah, it was a privilege to talk to some of the monks. I talked to some, like, two guys that were a little bit younger. They were maybe in their late 30s or something, you know, but they had chosen the monastic life and they were living there, and they were very friendly and open towards me, and they kind of took an interest in me, and then, you know, started the conversation with me. And then they would also ask me, like, you know, are you Orthodox or are you Catholic? Those were basically the two main options in their minds, is like either Orthodox or Catholic. And then I'm like, no, I'm actually neither. And then they're like, Protestant. And I'm like, no, also not really, you know. It's like I'm not anything. Then they understood that, sort of, okay, I'm not part of a church. I'm not even baptized, you know. But they understood that, you know, I'm a seeker, you know. And then they were like, you're a seeker. You're looking for a God or Christ. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's the best way to put it. And
They're like, who is this Dutch infidel,
yeah.
this Dutch heathen, secular?
Well, it was so interesting that I was for the first time confronted with my lack of a religious identity, you know. And it's like, I don't actually have a religious identity. And that's not really a thing that makes you stand out in the Netherlands, because nobody has a religious identity. Basically, everybody's secular. But there, especially if you come to Mount Athos, like, you come there if you have a sort of a religious calling or something. Like, otherwise you don't come there. You don't go there just as a tourist, even though some people do. But those people are often actually Orthodox. And so that was interesting to see that. And sort of awkward, a little bit awkward. And I was that for the first time. I was like, I wish I was baptized, and I wish I had a religious identity, you know, because now I'm just sort of something strange and unidentified or something. I don't know.
Yeah, because without that, you're just kind of a secular blob of, well, that's the thing. There's no need there. The religious category doesn't really play into it for us.
No,
in the West, it's not really. It's not even a category that people are interested in, or it's like us. Maybe
used to
you'll
be.
ask someone that down the road. Yeah, it used to be. But now we've secularized it, and now it's, if someone's spiritual, now, like, I would say the most likely thing is that someone's spiritual but not religious,
Yeah.
or they're scientific, and that scientifically minded, and that's often the default, and that takes the place of religion. But people don't think of that as being in the religious category, but it is. It's another form of the religious thought going on, or the philosophical thought about the universe. But it's interesting, like, because you have this feeling, it's like this lack of belonging to something that's not just your family or your tribe or your country, your nation state.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because religion gives you like a relation, a belonging that's also grounded in like a metaphysics and like
Totally.
a deeper thing that transcends the worldly stuff, which is pretty interesting.
For sure. Yeah.
But continue with the story when you arrive and
Yeah. So
settle in.
yeah. Well, then, you know, I had lunch with the monks in this big hall, and then They have like very nice food, but it's like simple food. It's like they have some kind of stew and a salad with like fresh vegetables from their own. It's basically all made from their own vegetable garden. You know, they just make their own produce and then they make their own food. And it's simple, but it's very tasteful.
Mm.
You know, it's very tasteful. It's almost like it has this extra quality of taste. And I don't know if that was because of the state that I was in or because of the quality of the food and how it's grown. Because it wouldn't surprise me if it's grown with a lot of care and attention and love, and that goes into the food, and it's like sun ripened and it grows at this beautiful island. And I don't know, that's definitely remarked that. And the olive oil, bro, the olive oil is the best. You know, it's like that's like an elixir of the gods. You know, like beautiful, beautiful tasting olive oil, and with some nice freshly baked bread. You know, even just the bread and the olive oil, wow. And then a glass of wine, and then it's also because in this monastic environment, there are not a lot of things to get you to give you satisfaction, right? Or to I don't know, I guess the satisfaction or the dopamine that you get from, you know, certain stimuli that you're used to in normal everyday life. It's like you get something to stimulate you every minute, and like it's always there at your disposal. But here it's like basically that's all stripped away. There's very little stimuli. You're not in an environment that's catering to your sensual pleasures or sort of, you know, your indulgences. But that means that the food that you do get to eat then also has this extra quality, and it's like you can enjoy it extra, because otherwise it would kind of pale with the rest of the stimuli that you have in your life. But now it's, you know, it can fully be appreciated for the quality that it has because the rest is stripped away. So I love that. Very nice wine that they made themselves, like, you know, homemade wine made by the monks is like amazing, you know?
Nice. Monk wine.
Yeah.
Love to try it one day.
And I talked to the monks, you know, the two younger monks, and I talked to them about sort of my own vices, you know, because we were talking about, you know, the good life and sort of, you know, and how to deal with your vices, and because that's basically also what, you know, Christianity is also about, right? It's like to not fall into temptation of your own vices. And then I told the monks, like, basically my two vices are like tobacco and women, you know. I just confessed it. I confessed it to them. It's like, this is just the naked truth, you know. I'm addicted.
Well, you're doing well now. You've gotten rid of one of those.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. But
The
then
woman,
it was funny.
Obviously. You still got the tobacco going strong. No, I'm kidding. It's the other way around for everyone listening.
But then the monk, he was like, you know, he nodded to me. He's like, yeah, I understand. And then he told me an anecdote. He was like, I'm going to tell you a story. And I was like, oh, let's go, please. So he tells me a story of a young guy that goes to university, that leaves his father's house, goes to university, to the big city. And then he writes his father in the first weeks, like, oh, Dad, you know, like, all is lost. I've started smoking tobacco, you know, like, I don't know what to do. I just love it too much. And then his dad writes him back. He's like, don't worry about it. You know, it's just a phase, you know, it's going to pass. You know, you're young, whatever. It's fine. Then a couple of weeks pass, and he writes his dad, like, you know, about the next thing, which is women. He's like, oh, you know, I'm obsessed with women. You know, like, I'm addicted to them. I can't get enough. You know, like, what am I supposed to do? And then his dad writes him back again. It's like, you know, don't worry about it. It's just a phase. You know, you're young. Is it gonna pass? And then a couple of weeks go by, and he writes his father, like, Dad, I've become addicted to gambling. You know, I'm gambling all my money away, and it's like, this is becoming a real problem. Then his dad writes him back. He's like, come home right now. So that was the monk's piece of wisdom for me. He's like, you're fine. It's okay. Just don't.
So once you start gambling, that's the problem.
Yeah, apparently.
Fair enough. Gambling does sound like a very bad idea.
Yeah. I think so.
Alcohol, I mean, cigarettes and women are all good.
Yeah, it's completely normal.
Interesting.
And yeah, then there was one experience, and I haven't told that experience a lot because I felt like I haven't wanted to profane the experience by talking about it because it was so impactful and so significant for me personally, and it felt really holy. But I decided I would like to share it because it's actually really meaningful, and I think it's also valuable to share that experience as well. Which was the next morning. The monastery held a church service. So basically, in the middle of the monastery, in the courtyard, there was this little chapel, and I had already taken a look inside. But during the service, I had been told by the monks that it's only only Orthodox people are allowed to attend the service, because they say like it's actually a special ceremony. It's actually really significant, and the risk is that it will be profaned by outsiders being present. So you need to be initiated in the church in order to be part of the ritual. And they sing together, they chant, and they create a unique, a special atmosphere.
Well, is this
And
like the Orthodox chanting that you see on YouTube?
yeah, basically like the
Like,
Gregorian chants.
like that? Wow. Okay. That
Yeah,
gives me
yeah,
a sense of what it must have been like to find that. That's awesome.
yeah. It's
That's
really,
epic.
really incredible.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I can only imagine what it must be like to be part of that, to be one of the brothers, and to engage in that ritual together. It must be profound.
Must be
Um,
legendary.
but then I decided to go to the monastery, to the chapel, while they were doing the service, and just sit outside, because I felt like the whole monastery is here now in the chapel. I'm not gonna go be somewhere else. I'm just gonna be present, but outside. Completely respectful of the fact that I couldn't participate, but I still wanted to be there and show my respect and my reverence, and sort of just sit on the bench just outside the chapel. So that's what I did. All the monks went inside, and then everybody was already inside, and then the priest came. Now the priest was a relatively young man. He was like, I think in his 40s maybe. Big beard, like they all have a big beard. They grow out their beards, right? Long hair, big beard.
What are they
And
wearing, by the way?
black robes. They all wear black robes.
Black robes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay. We should put an image of that up on the video as well.
Yeah, totally. And these are Bulgarian men. This was a Bulgarian monastery. Most of the monasteries are Greek, and there are some Russian, Serbian monasteries, but this one was Bulgarian. And the priest came up as the last one to enter the chapel. But before he went in, he looked to his side and he noticed me sitting there. And then everybody was waiting inside for the priest, but he took he went out of his way to take a moment to have some attention for me, So he walks up to me and he addresses me. He's like, "Since you're sitting here, I presume you're not Orthodox?" And I say like, "Yeah, that's true." And then he asks, "Where are you from?" And then I explain to him that I'm from the Netherlands, and I tell him about my background. I don't know. We have a little chat. Like I tell him what I'm studying and what I studied. That I studied anthropology, and we have a very casual little conversation. He says like, there's a connection between anthropology and Athos. He's like, he's like pensive for a moment. He's like, there's a connection here, and I don't know. There's something about his presence and the fact that he has full undivided attention for me in this moment, that touches me so deeply that I was just awestruck by him, and I while he was so radiant, he was so radiant that I almost couldn't look him in the face. It's like looking him in the face. It's like he had a halo around his head, you know, of just pure shimmering radiance, to the point where it was so bright that I almost, like, he was shining so much that I almost couldn't look him in the face, you know, and I was just filled with reverence and respect. But he was very compassionate towards me, you know. He asked my name, and then I told him my name, and he said, like, there's a Bulgarian version of your name. And, you know, these little things that, like, I gave him an answer, and he really engaged with my answer, and, like, took his time for that. And then he greeted me, and then he went inside to attend to the service, to lead the service. And when he left, I was just moved to tears. I could not do nothing but just sit there and weep, you know, because I've been touched so deeply by his radiance and his compassion. And I was like, I've never met a man like that. I didn't even know that human beings could be like that.
Wow.
And I was like, that's a priest, you know?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Wow, that's
Incredible
amazing.
experience.
So just the feeling, the radiance and the vibration and just the feeling of his presence,
Yeah,
was so powerful. Interesting.
I guess that's what you know, in the yogic tradition would call Shakti, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shakti. Yeah, or darshan or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like being in the presence of a teacher, and just being in their presence can be like transformative. That's I mean,
Right.
there's a whole tradition around that all around India. That's the whole function, or the whole how the guru relationship actually works. Is that the guru is supposed to be, like you say, a real priest who's got a real quality of consciousness, which is not normal. Like, it's not a normal, a low level, ordinary, worldly, daily, day-to-day, like animal level of consciousness. It's like some sort of expansive or deeply peaceful state of mind, which is really like significant, and that transmits from them to the people around them in their auric field, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have no doubt that that's the real thing, you know, after that experience.
Yeah, that's
That was
beautiful,
really
man. Thank you
profound.
for sharing that.
Yeah. I
Interesting.
cherish
So he
that.
didn't say anything in particular, but it was like the
No, it wasn't what he said, you know, just his presence, his radiance, and the fact that he went out of his way to attend to me, even though there was a whole chapel full of monks waiting for him to lead the service, you know, just the compassion, you know. It was profound.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I've the way you said like the full attention on you is interesting, because I've experienced with a monk, an ordained monk, Tibetan Buddhist monk called Mila, and I've been going to this center regularly for 4 years in Joburg before I came to the Netherlands. And she, yeah, when she spoke to me as well, like the first time I spoke to her afterwards and I asked her a question, it just felt like all the attention in the room, like all her attention just went onto me with this compassionate attention. Like she's totally there, totally tuned in, like absolutely present. And it felt like this like tunneling onto me. And she's just like, I want to answer your question. Like, what do you have to say? Because there's someone that's developed so much mindfulness as well, and so much presence and concentration.
Right.
Interesting. These kinds of people that are really like extraordinary people that redefine like kind of what it is to be, what you can be as a person.
Yeah.
You know, like what you can be as a human.
For sure, for sure. And that also shows then, like, you know, choosing a monastic life is not just a life of, you know, kind of boredom and I don't know, some life of austerity, but it's a life where there's a potential for, or there's like you know, a fertile ground for like real and profound spiritual self-realization, which is something that's actually valuable to a completely different degree, you know, than what we're used to in ordinary life. People are so alienated
Mm.
from that whole principle that they don't even realize that this is a possibility, and it used to be the case that all over Europe, you had monasteries scattered around, and that was a place that certain people with a certain persuasion could go to pursue a spiritual path. People for whom maybe there was no place in society, but, who could actually lead a life of spiritual devotion, which, could actually yield powerful results, And you
Mm.
don't have that anymore.
No. Yeah, it's interesting. In terms of what you cultivate by being a renunciate or being in a monastery or in that environment, or even just doing practice, spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like there's a scale between, at the moment, kind of the trending thing online is like dopamine fasting or dopamine detox and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing, not being on your phone too much and like not, not overindulging and like having less sense pleasure, less instant gratification. So people are
Yeah.
realizing that now after the
Yeah.
last 20 years, which is like mega overload of pleasure and instant gratification,
Yeah.
um, with the phone and everything. But so I feel like there's
Exactly.
a scale between like dopamine fasting or dopamine detox and just being more disciplined and like going for runs and cold showers and stuff. There's a scale between that and like being a full blown renunciate and like actually
Yeah.
like renouncing the world and taking a vow of celibacy and stuff. But
Right.
just that actual scale, like that actual act, that movement, like it's a path that you can enter, like a stream that you can enter, which is less instant gratification, less being led by your animal desires, like your base desires, and taking kind of a higher path in life. And I feel like that's I've been doing like the things like that, cold showers, trying to be on my phone less for years and be more disciplined and less instant gratification. But I feel
Mm-hmm.
like when I did this Vipassana retreat, then that's the first time ever that I really understood why anyone would actually be a renunciate or what like renunciation as a spiritual concept is all about. Because I realized what you actually gain in a state like that. Because in this retreat state for 10 days, you're silent, you've got no distractions, you're meditating all day. So um, it's very much heightened, this state. And so I realized what you actually are gaining by giving up all these distractions and all these other things and all these pleasures is that you're actually gaining like a deep joy, like a really solid, very tangible feeling of like happiness, contentment, peace, a subtle
Yeah.
vibration that becomes not so subtle. And you feel like you're high. You actually feel like you're high, but in a way that you've never been high before because you didn't drink anything and
Mm-hmm.
you didn't work yourself into it by stimulation or getting carried away with something. It's just this like natural peacefulness and this feeling of connectedness and like a presence. And
Yeah.
basically that feels amazing. Basically that feels
Right.
like priceless. I mean, if you could bottle that and give that to someone,
Mm-hmm.
give
Mm-hmm.
someone that feeling, it would be like the best selling drug that you could have because there's
Yeah.
no come down as well.
That's the thing. It's like the inverse of our kind of our modern mindset and lifestyle. If you pursue instant gratification, it's constantly you're pursuing gratification after gratification. You're always seeking out the stimuli. Like you're scrolling on TikTok and Instagram Reels, and you're watching pornography, and you're eating junk food, and like you're doing all these things, maybe taking drugs, smoking, drinking, doing all these things to constantly give you instant gratification. If you go down that rabbit hole, then you pursue the short-term gratification, but what builds is like structurally a level of misery starts to build, and the misery just gets
Mm,
higher and higher and higher, and you just end up being completely depleted and depressed, and nothing does it anymore. Nothing does the trick anymore. It's like you don't really get any
mm,
real satisfaction because there's no real progression towards anything that's of some kind of higher value. um, and that's just builds, and that just mental suffering just accumulates, and that's what we see happening in our culture. And it's like a monastic life or a life of renunciation is the opposite, right? It's like by foregoing instant gratification, by foregoing the pleasure in the immediate moment right now, and you do that again and again and again, keep foregoing the gratification, then what builds is actually a structural level of happiness and joy and bliss and fulfillment, right? And it's subtle, and you never get to experience that unless you go through all those moments of foregoing instant gratification, delaying gratification, and not to just relapse later, but actually to build that, right? And to live that life. There's a something that comes out of that you only get to experience if you have the discipline to carry that through. And it's the inverse. Yeah. It's the complete inverse.
So true. That's really well put. That's exactly, I think that nails it, because it's so funny. It's so ironic how you would think, it seems like the intuitive thing to do is to seek pleasure, and to seek instant gratification, and to be like, well, I'm going to get myself the most comfortable, luxurious life and have all these sense pleasures that make me feel good in the moment, and just gratify and just do whatever I want, because that, you're getting pleasure, you're making yourself feel good. But actually, long term, you're lowering yourself, and you're making yourself habituated to these instant gratifications. And so there's an addictive habit pattern that develops, and a craving where you're never actually truly like happy or satisfied, because you're always seeking and getting a little bit of gratification, and then you have like a come down. And that's kind of the dopamine, that's like the new science on dopamine, recent science on dopamine, about how just new insights into how dopamine always goes up, and then it always balances out again, always levels out again. So you're always on this up and down cycle of trying to seek pleasure. But it's like, you shouldn't be on the dopamine cycle. You should be, I don't know, maybe the serotonin is like the equivalent thing in the brain with those kind of metaphors. But yeah. And it's interesting how our culture, like, I think it goes along with materialism, the materialism, the atheism, and the nihilism, where it seems like this is almost the ethos of our time, where it's like, be successful so that you can have lots of pleasure and just kind of eat, drink, and be merry.
Yeah, exactly. Or the stuff that you see coming out, it's like there's also a shadow element of that stuff that you see coming out with the Epstein files nowadays. It's like the stuff that's coming to light, which has been going on for decades or longer, and maybe has been going on since time immemorial, is that, people who are in a position of power, basically people, it's like, when we have this mechanism in place where we just pursue short-term pleasure at the cost of some kind of higher value, at transgressing against our own conscience, because that's basically always what you do, but then in a small degree, so you doesn't really stand out, right? But the mechanism is the same, the principle is the same. And then you see that those people who are in positions of real power, like incredible power, and like, they have the resources, the money to basically take that to a completely different level. But what they're doing in principle is the same. It's just pursuing pleasure, pursuing gratification at the cost of some kind of higher value, while transgressing against your own morals, transgressing against, the integrity or the sovereignty of other individuals, of those who are more vulnerable, right? Who don't have that amount of power. It's like that's the extreme version of it. That's the extreme shadow side of it. But it's not a coincidence that that's a part of our culture, and people see that coming up and they're like appalled by it, but they don't realize that it's just an extension of the thing that we're all doing constantly, right?
That's a great point. Yeah, because once you get that powerful, this is the whole thing about why do billionaires want more money? Why do people want more money when they have more money than they can ever spend in a lifetime? And it's because they're addicted to it, basically. It's pure addiction. It's like Trump. Like, you made the point about Trump once. It's like, it's as if he's become president and he's gotten absolute power, and that's still not enough for him.
Right.
He still needs more attention every day. He's an attention whore. He's addicted to the attention because it's actually an addiction it's a craving, it's an addiction, and it's the craving and the clinging to experiences and to new things and to forms. So when you become Jeffrey Epstein level of wealth, or you're Trump, and then suddenly you get presented with this new form of power and this new form of pleasure, you it's not that you don't need it and you wouldn't forego your values for that. It's that you do need it because you're an addict and you've been an addict your whole life.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's Sodom and Gomorrah, basically. If you bring it back to the Bible story, it's Sodom and Gomorrah, and like Sodom and Gomorrah is this part of humanity. It lives in our culture too. It's like sexual depravity is kind of like the most, poignant example of that. It's like sexual amorality.
It's also a low chakra thing, right? It's also a lower chakra
right.
thing as well. So it's a low vibrational thing as well.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, the Bible story is also that God saves the city from destruction, even for the sake of just one good man, of just one good person. Because if there is one monk or one renunciate, who is actually leading by example, by actually not giving into his impulses, but doing the opposite, choosing the alternative route of actually sacrifice of the instant gratification, sacrifice of the appetites, of the passions, for that higher ideal, for the higher good, for the higher virtue, for the good life. If there's but one person who does that, then that person proves that humanity has the seed in itself to actually realize that alternative, and that maybe people are lost now, but they too can be redeemed, because we all have the potential within us to turn the ship around, right? And to chart a different course. And that, as soon as you do that, you change your orientation from a downward orientation to an upward orientation, and then you can just grow, and then that just expands, and that's worthwhile, right? And a whole city would be saved even if there's just one person embodying that.
I wanted to also point out that something I was listening to some lectures by Ram Dass the other day, and talking about, he was kind of explaining, it's the lecture titles is From Bindu to Ojas. This is also a good idea to bring into this, where in the Vedic tradition you have Bindu and Ojas, and the Bindu is like the sexual energy, kind of the lower energy that animates the body, and it's the sexual energy, I believe. And then the Ojas is like a spiritual energy, like a radiance.
Yeah.
And someone with a lot of Ojas, then you can feel their radiance because they're operating on higher plane of reality, and they've transmuted or they've moved away from the lower energy into the higher energy. And this is kind of playing out in the chakras. And so I just loved listening to Ram Dass speak about this, because he framed it as that normally in our culture, we're living in the first three chakras. And, the first chakra is like the survival element, just trying to survive. Second chakra is the sexual chakra. Third chakra is like power and ego. And that's kind of where we are. And a lot of people are between the second and third chakra. And when you speak to them, you can feel that they're on an ego, power, sexual level, like sexual trip or ego, power trip. And that's where they are.
Yeah.
And then above that, you have the heart. And then you enter the heart space. And the heart is a different thing. And that's, probably what people feel when they fall in love, and they feel like so elated and so, such a beautiful feeling, because they're finally in the heart space. But you don't actually need, this is the classic spiritual trope as well, is that you don't actually need the other person or the external thing to give you that love, because that's just the natural state in the heart space. But and then it goes up from there into the throat, and then the third eye and the crown. But it's just this framing of that when you start to give up the lower chakra energy, or the lower desires, or the instant gratification, the thing that really is like the key to understand why people do this, or why it's worth it, is that you're actually not giving anything up, because you start to care less and less about the lower chakra things, or you start to care less and less about your old addictions as you move up into the spiritual energy, and you start to experience that blissful, peaceful, radiant state, that luminosity. And so it feels like you're giving up everything. It feels like, why would you go and sit in a meditation retreat for 10 days with no phone and not be able to talk and eat simple food and fast. Why would you do that? That sounds like torture. That's what everyone says. They're like, that sounds like torture. But the
Mm-hmm.
crazy thing is that by the time it comes to an end, you actually don't want to leave because you've never felt that good in your life. And you feel really good and you feel like good in like a pure way. And
Right.
so you start to move up into a different kind of level of reality, a different state of mind, where the lower things that used to be your vices no longer mean anything to you. You're beyond that, and so you're not actually giving up the world. You're actually gaining the world. You're gaining everything, and giving up a lesser form of the world or something.
Right. That's a good one, right? That the idea of renunciation implies too much that you have to give up the world, but you're renouncing a part of the world that's like, immediate sense pleasures and constant stimulation, but actually you're getting something more real in return, which is a world where, there's real presence and attention and awareness and like communion with reality and communion with other people. And that's anything but a renunciation. In a way, it's a full embrace, it's a full lived experience.
Mm,
It's like it's more vibrant, it's more alive, it's more real. um
mm.
and
It's a
I
full
think that's often
embrace.
not realized. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a full embrace and giving up the things that are obstructing you from a deeper truth, a deeper engagement with reality.
Yeah, but
And
we
that's
don't
the
want to
other
give
thing
up
is
our
that
addictions, right?
no, yeah. But and that's the other thing is that you get this, you feel high, you start to feel high in this state, in a pure way, in a different way, not in a way of taking drugs or something, but you're high, you're alive, you're high, it's the high life really. The thing is that it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
come down. It only comes down to the degree that you haven't gotten over your stuff. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
the only time that it comes down is when you go back into your complexes,
Mm-hmm.
into your sanskaras or your addictions or your shadow. And to the degree to which you haven't kind of let go of things or purified yourself, that's when you kind of regress or go into the shadow or something. And it's all up to you and it's all up to your level of development, how free you are and how happy you are.
Yeah.
Because it's the only game in town as well, like this kind of spiritual path evolution.
And the
It's
thing
the
is also, it
only
doesn't really matter.
no,
It
continue.
matters if you, well, it matters if you follow a spiritually potent path and a path of real devotion, and reverence and maybe service, right? And it doesn't matter if you're like an Indian yogi or if you're an Orthodox monk, or if you follow some kind of different path. The point is like you have a path and there's a progression. Um, it's not like there's only one true religion, right? If anything, that's disproven by the fact that there are real saints in so many traditions, right? And sainthood is not something that's reserved to one tradition, right? And sainthood is a real potential. And it's not, we think about saints as something like, they're kind of like avatars of the divine or something, and it's like they're an extraordinary league of human beings. But the point is that those people also started out as normal human beings who had a certain path in their life, and maybe they had previous lives that led up to that life. But the point is that in principle, every single human being has that potential for sainthood, and we are all called upon to live a life that is as good as we can make it, really. And that's available to us, right, to pursue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking about the quote, the Jesus quote about gaining the world. It's like for what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? If he gains the whole world and
Mm,
loses his soul.
yeah.
Well, on the other hand, on the other hand, is what you do is you give up the world, and you gain your soul, and you gain
Right.
the
Exactly.
divine, and you gain the divine principle. You actually
Exactly.
gain like the holy grail, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But this whole, yeah, I think the reason this is Yeah, I would also like to emphasize again that I think there's a scale, there's a spectrum of what's going on here. Like, it's not
Mm-hmm.
that the only way to be spiritual is to fully become a renunciate and to become a monk,
Mm-hmm.
and renounce the world.
No.
I would say there needs to be a middle ground, and I was thinking like maybe it could be like a sliding scale. Like you can do 50% renunciation, 50% in the world, in relationships, creating art, having attachments, making money, and just kind
Mm.
of can't have a best of both worlds. You can have your cake and eat it too, maybe. But I think there's some really value. There's a value in understanding the ethic of that, and like entering the stream of that, and that upward orientation, like you said.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you don't have
Exactly.
to be a renunciate to be spiritual and live the good life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the spirit of that does kind of become inevitable in your life. I would say
Yeah.
the spirit of
Mhm.
that kind of higher orientation.
And it's a real thing, and it's in a way it's what you should want for yourself. It's like it's the best thing to strive after, because I think a lot of people in our culture feel like religion is just moralizing structures that are patriarchal, or they're oppressive systems. And it's like we should be happy that we're liberated from that, and these types of morals that we got from religion are just based on, well, basically ignorance and some kind of bias or whatever, or patriarchal power systems for control. And we should happily be rid of that. And now basically we can decide what's right or wrong ourselves, and and that basically just that gives way to the ego just deciding that it will live on its own whims and it's fine. There's nothing amoral about it. And then suddenly, all bets are off, and like anything is permitted, right? And then people engage in behavior that, well, basically then Sodom and Gomorrah becomes manifest.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
the people, there's just no more inhibitions. Things that were seen as amoral before are now sort of sanctified or whatever. And then but then the point is that people go down a path that actually leads them to more suffering, and that creates suffering around them. And people don't necessarily realize that, because it has the allure of pleasure and gratification. And like, what's wrong with that? Why should it be wrong to pursue pleasure? Pleasure is good, right? But people don't understand that, actions have consequences. And that the religious codes, that the religious morals, even though sometimes, of course, they get taken too far, or they become corrupted, or they become oppressive, there's still a core about the path of spiritual devotion and spiritual purity, and the life of virtue, which actually leads to the greatest good for well, oneself and also the world
mm,
at large, right?
right. I think also the thing that matters is that the quality of your mind matters, and that's why there's this moral element in religions and spiritual traditions. It's because the quality
Mm-hmm.
of your mind matters, and that there is a
Yeah.
karmic element to life, or an element of like a continuity of your actions or the effects of your actions. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why it is so interesting in the Buddhist context, where they frame it as like you have these sankharas or samskaras in the Hindu context, but
Yeah.
sankhara basically
Maybe
just means,
explain that, right?
mm, yeah, sankhara basically just means like an imprint on the mind or an effect on the mind that is playing out within you. So you have these sankharas. So let's say um, something intense happens, or you get addicted to something, or you, well, it's hard to kind of generalize it now, because in the Vipassana retreat, it was like you had a pain in your back. Pain in the back led you to be averse to it and resist it. And your resistance to it then creates like another action, a mini action in the mind. And that action creates another seed of like a mental seed that then emerges and will have
Mm.
more effects. So it's basically
They're like
like your
mental habit
impurities.
patterns.
Yes. Your habit patterns and your impurities as well. So yeah, and this is an
Mm.
interesting point as well about what I wanted to also bring up is that this state of like natural blissfulness, natural peace, natural vibration is actually the natural state, and that it's not like you're getting high into some like magical state of consciousness. It's more like you're clearing away all of the impurities and the conditioning and the conditioned mind, which keep you from your natural state, which is actually like a peacefulness and like a natural joy. And that's also what you find with the word Sat Chit Ananda in the Vedic context as well, where you got Sat Chit Ananda, which is like a description of reality, but it's in one way of thinking about it is that it's Sat, which means being, or Sat, which means awareness. No, Sat means being, like being, absolute being, and Chit means mind or awareness, and then Ananda means like bliss or joy. And so what that means is that awareness of being is joyful, is blissful.
Right.
And so just having that level of awareness is a joyful thing. The awareness of your being, just that alone creates bliss. And that's like a natural thing. That's a natural state that's going on, aside from the ego and all the defilements that obstruct that. So you're actually clearing away all those things. And so the sankharas are basically like defilements or impurities or habits. And let's say, like, I don't know, like you get addicted to something and that creates like a deep carving in your mind, a deep groove in your mind that has effects. And so, you know, in the Buddhist Vipassana meditation situation, what's going on is that you're clearing out your sankharas. So by feeling pain and then you feel the pain, it comes into your mind and you don't react with aversion. You just neutrally observe it with equanimity, non-reaction. Then the theory is that you're no longer generating a new sankhara by the reaction to it or the clinging. And so then what happens is new sankharas can come up and be burned through in your awareness, in the light of your awareness. So it's a purification practice. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Okay. You still there? Did I lose you?
Yeah. No, I'm there.
Okay. Okay, well, well, did you have anything to say on that, first of all?
Well, I was just wondering whether, you know, prayer in the Christian context is basically the same mechanism, is doing the same thing. It's also working, burning through some samskaras, and there's just a different language of describing it, but basically it's the same thing, and that you can reach a state of purity. Probably is comparable. If it isn't exactly the same, it's probably something similar, I imagine.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I don't know. I think the practices are different. I would say that practice did feel, when I was being taught it, I felt like this is unique. Like this is a very specific thing. And I felt like what would happen is that in other spiritual practices, other paths, you would go through that purification anyways, kind of, you know, like as you become more in a Christian context, as you become more like Christ-like and you become more connected with God,
leading a more moral life also, right?
Yeah. And more of that energy would it would naturally happen over the time, over the, you know, over a lifetime, you would become purified. But I think this technique that the Buddha presented to the world, which is how the teacher of Vipassana frames it, like this is his unique contribution, is that's like a pure going into purification, doing purification work specifically. And that is why I think I think there's a value in the syncretism element of spirituality, you know, like being able to have the internet in this modern time and, you know, be like, okay, I'm going to do Vipassana as a purification practice, but maybe I'm also going to do self-inquiry, or I'm going to also do Kriya to kind of have a more brute force way of like activating the energy system. I don't know. It's kind of unknown. It's undetermined whether that will be a good thing or not. Having that kind of availability of multiple paths and practices.
Yeah, this is definitely a big question, I think, and also I'm not so sure what the right answer is, but personally, I feel like, because I wasn't raised in a religious tradition, and this is kind of a unique position to be in as a human being, to grow up and to not be raised within a particular spiritual or religious tradition. Basically, it's unique in the history of mankind. It's like I consider myself like a cultural experiment in that sense, right? Um, and and I think our time is also a time where maybe what is called for is a new answer to some of these spiritual existential questions. And I personally don't feel like a conversion to some tradition that I was not raised in, that I was not born within, is not necessarily going to be the answer. I do not necessarily feel inclined at this moment in time, at this moment in my on my path, to convert to one or the other religious tradition and become a devotee, right? Or become confessional within one tradition. I feel like that's maybe right for some people, and maybe it even will be right for me at some point. But the path of a seeker, who is just after the truth, regardless of where one can find it, and it's like I'm on a path that I consider to be an adventure. I don't know. That feels right to me, and that also means that you harvest wisdom from different sources, and yeah, you find out what resonates you, what helps you progress, what helps you improve, and I don't know. There's also this idea that in the new age, the age of Aquarius or whatever, or the new cultural paradigm that we're entering, it's no longer the age of the teacher. It's no longer the age of the one leader that we all look up to, like one in a crowd who's like a messiah or a prophet or like a religious authority or religious leader, as was the case in the previous age, like the age of Pisces, that we had these great religious sources of authority. That now going into the new age, it's a new paradigm, a new dynamic. Power dynamics are shifting, and that's no longer the age of the leader. It's the age of the quality of leadership as embodied by every single individual. And that it's through our personal leadership that we can usher in a new era of, I don't know, of a new way of life, of virtue and well-being and harmony.
Well, it makes sense because the way life is, the way that we have progressed, as a society, we've progressed cognitively and spiritually, is that we've let go of dogma and we've become more relative and more critical. And we've decided like we're not going to believe in superstition. We're not going to give ourselves to these old ideas and just take it for granted anymore. So it makes sense that that would be the next step if there's still going to be a big spiritual energy going on. That it will happen without dogma.
Yeah.
And without, and it can never be sectarian. It has to be universal. It's one of the things I enjoyed about the Goenka Vipassana retreat, where he kept emphasizing the universality of Vipassana, and something cannot be sectarian because then not everyone can practice it and stuff.
Right.
And I think that I think that what you were saying earlier, like there's a real being a seeker of truth. I think there's something to be said about the untruth of all traditions or all religious ideologies or something. That there's always an element of a human-made or corrupted or perspective in one tradition. And if you were to be fully a Christian or something, you would, surely you could go and you could have the full Christian mystical awakening in life, and that would be beautiful. But there's always like going to be some limited perspective to that. And these things are not the be all and end all. These are the ideas that we've inherited.
Yeah.
And I think that truth is beyond concepts or traditions.
Right.
If you really wanted to be a hardcore seeker. And everything is limited, even the most profound traditions. They always have their biases, right? They always have their
they're always of this world in a way, right? like a
And they always
religious.
have their little
Mm,
quirks and their little
yeah,
self biases, and like, this is the
yeah,
best, and you should do this and not that, and
yeah, yeah.
Well, I was wondering if you wanted to perhaps finish up anything on the Mount Athos story, if there's anything else after that, because we kind of just left it at that one point and then had this whole conversation.
Yeah, well, no,
But
that's good. That's fine because actually that was sort of the peak experience, and then I spent another night at another monastery, which was a completely different experience because it was a much bigger monastery with a lot of visitors that were present, and basically, after that experience, I felt like I had already gotten what I came for, and I felt like this was this meeting with the priest was just a reward for my whole pilgrim journey, my whole 7-week, bike trip to Greece, and
wow.
it all made it all worthwhile. It was such a profound, impactful moment. And then the day after, I'd still gotten a lecture on the sort of Orthodox teaching and the difference with Catholicism by basically the second in line, sort of like the vice priest or whatever you call it, a person like
The
that.
vice president.
Which was very nice, and that was a really cool meeting as well. And yeah, it was a wonderful experience going there. I'll remember that for the rest of my life, and gave me a deep appreciation for the Eastern Orthodox Church also. And still now to this day, I want to learn more, study more. The Eastern Orthodox faith, because there's something about the spiritual potency of the way that they practice Christianity that is really profound, I think. And I think it's much more, I don't know, well, it's more aligned with my own persuasion, let's say, than Protestantism, and
Mm.
that's interesting to me. And it's not, yeah, I don't know. Look into it.
Yeah, it is very interesting. It has a certain allure to it. And it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
also got a certain resonance in the collective now, I'd say, with the Gregorian chanting and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the YouTube videos that go viral where it's like you're an Eastern Orthodox priest studying for your exam or something with lo-fi beats, like
Oh yeah.
Eastern Orthodox lo-fi beats to something. I don't
Oh my
know.
god.
You gotta love it.
I love
You
it.
gotta love the time that we're in as well. Like it's kind of awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that would be a good place to wrap it up.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for sharing your story, Florian.
Yeah, thank you
And
for
yeah,
listening.
it's a pleasure. And yeah, please like and subscribe and comment to everyone listening. Thank you for joining.
See you next time.
Peace out. See you next time.